a music history project, I'd like to dive right into Vecchi's Entreprenarso. Vecchi's Entreprenarso is known as a magical comedy. It was performed first in the late Renaissance period, and a magical comedy shouldn't be confused for any sort of opera. This is strictly a list of magical pieces that represent characters and their progression. However, it never solos out voices and has quite the same dramaticness that is known from operas. This piece really only had 5 singers and a harpsichord behind it. And that's really all that was made musically, and none of the voices really ever got singled out. Instead, to represent characters, often voices would be represented in certain timbres, depending on what harmonies we're singing together. And we're going to look at that a little later as well. So, this particular piece, even in the prologue, it says, is a comedy for the ear and not the eye. Which really makes it sad that Vecchi wasn't around in the time of podcasts, but that's okay. So what this kind of means is it's really meant to be listened to. However, for us in the 21st century, it's rather hard to be able to listen and understand 16th century Venetian. So what I'm going to be starting with today is the first scene you're going to look at is actually going to be a physical representation, often what might have been actually performed back then. Even though the piece does warn itself, don't look at it, but if you need someone to help guide you along the way, which I think we do, then please do take a look at it just so you don't, go off the rails or anything. And what was interesting is that it was not the singers on stage. In fact, it was the miming actors themselves. They often performed with masks and stayed entirely silent, only doing miming actions of very comedic different things, of different, like saying totally silent and either being absolutely in love or in sorrow or just being very strange. And little did I know that would actually represent what I am used to in my everyday life right now. I didn't know people would just be being ridiculous and wearing masks everywhere, and it's very interesting. I didn't know the research for this historical piece would help me prepare for that. But before I start showing the scene, I want to give a little context to the plot here. Now, we start with a character named Pantalone. He's an older gentleman. He's a fairly well-off merchant, and he's talking to his servant named Fagiolini. Now, they're having a nice chat, and then Pantalone's like, whoa. There's this, how do I say, stripper that I'm kind of interested in. And I think she's old too, so I think we'd be good together. Let me just confess my love. I don't think and then the servant makes fun of him for saying such things, and then he confesses his love, and then she rejects him by saying that she's going to pour a chamber pot on his head. So that's fun, and that's a very comedic scene, and is meant to be. And then after that, we get a less comedic number. It is with younger lovers, Nisa and Lelio. Now, they're in love. However, Nisa gives Lelio these flowers that, they're nice-looking flowers. However, they actually represent something that, you see, they're Narcissus flowers, and they're actually named after a legend of someone who looked at their own reflection and died. And Lilo's like, wow, I'm not that narcissistic. Do you even really love me? I don't think you do. And that's pretty much that number. And then we bounce back to Pantalone, and a new character is introduced, Dr. Graziano, and this is the scene we're actually going to look at. Now, Graziano, very interesting character, very quirky lad indeed, is not very good with his words. He's at the time he's made fun of as an academic, as he is a doctor and yet does not look qualified to be a doctor, which is apparently hilarious. So pretty much Pantalone is like, hey, we're buds. We're both like lonely and don't have any females in our lives. Do you want to marry my daughter? That would fix it for at least one of us. Her name's Isabella. She's pretty neat. And that's pretty much what the scene is about. And we're going to take a look at that scene right now.
Or pervenir alla confusion, ardit messia per l'om, ca vuoi la puta, mintinsiu, mi peccao et diabonau. Intendo, ca la rondellire morti, teme la man, la puta sera vostra. Residia ver, a seno, a medulla, a fera sentir l'uomo. Oh, la fiore, cauda, o fiore fra le fiore, la prima fiore che scippa in tutta, che scippa in quattro fiore, via, cannevo fiolando, l'Orlando, o grana bestia, fra l'altre bestie, la mansor bestia, la bestia, la bestia, la via.
Now, I'm sure you're wondering the exact same thing that I'm wondering right now, which is, what is that white sack in front of the father's cross? I mean, what are they saying? Like, what is the exact, like, word per word dialogue? And for that, I'll get an answer. I'll just be on a phone call with one of my agents real quick. All right, so yeah, I just need it all translated. Oh, we don't. There is no translation? Oh, our translator is Google Translate. So there's no better option? Okay. We emailed the professor like 20 times about this already, and yeah, we're really bad at reading Wikipedia articles. It's okay. So it works, right? Contractions? There are contractions. And then Google Translate doesn't like that. So we don't know what those words are. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that my little like keynote like little animation with stick figures is all that the people are gonna know about the plot and what the characters are talking about? Okay. Yeah. Sounds. Oh, we're already halfway through the video. We need to stop this bit. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Bye. So we just left off at the end of Act 1 with Pantalone promising his daughter to Dr. Graziano. But here's the thing: is that Isabella, she gets around. There are other people interested in her. For instance, we have our friend here, Lucio. And he's in this particular scene, it is more of a lament, for he has very strong feelings for Isabella. However, feels that there is this competition of Captain Cardon. And he sees them together and feels that they are very in love, and pronounces that he is going to take himself towards the nearest cliff and then fall off of it. And that's pretty much the end of that first scene. And then the next scene, we have Captain Cardon talking to his servant Zane. And they kind of speak for a bit, and Zane's like, whoa, let's not like go hitting on every girl you see. Like, you've been spending a lot of time with Isabella, but she's kind of young. Captain Cardon pretty much just says, screw it, I'm gonna woo her. And then Isabella, in this lovely romantic scene, decides to, give all of her romance back. However, this is a bit of a false love, because she does this so that it will hurt more when she tries to kill herself, which is the next scene. So that's not ideal, because she actually has feelings for Lucio, and she feels like she's trapped in this loop where she can't be with who she actually loves. Now, here's the thing: is in the beginning of the scene, or she ends it with, she's wanting to end her own life. Luckily, Lucio has a very fine servant named Frula, and what Frula does is she tells Isabella, whoa, Lucio's still alive. He's doing great. He's not dead or anything. So you can stop that right there, and everything will be okay. And pretty much says Lucio's trying to think of the same thing, but it's because you two actually love each other. It's kind of just that resolution that's kind of needed. So now Isabella actually knows about Lucio's feelings, and this is a lot more of a serious scene, so I'd like to dive into this one. And this is also one where it actually it has a fair bit of the translation. A lot of the scenes involving Dr. Graziano and Captain Cardon are not really usable, as they use a lot of slang, which Google Translate does not like at all. So I'd like to dive into this scene with Frula and Isabella, because there is more of the translation there. Now, as you can see to the right here, I have the score in its original 16th century Venetian glory, and then to the left, I have a rough Google Translate into English. And as you can kind of see up at the top here, you actually have a 3-line poem that's actually going to be read at the beginning of the scene, essentially summarizing what's happening to the people. and it's translated into English, pretty much summarizes, gives the same plot summary I just gave, in that, Frula talks to Isabella and sees her attempting to end her own life, and then says, "Hey, Lucio's actually still alive, and he loves you." And it pretty much just says that. And if you kind of get further down, Frula says a rather important line here of what actually happened. So instead of ending his own life, he was actually saved by shepherd children, as you can kind of read right here. And he's actually totally fine. And they were sent to help. And then Isabella proclaims very boldly and emotionally, "Oh, I'm very happy. My reason to live is back. Fantastic. I'm not going to end my own life." Which is like, wow, is this a comedy? I guess so, because people are living. So if we kind of look here, actually, too, I want to talk about this real quick, is there's this like wood art printing that was on every single scene, and this kind of depicts what's kind of happening for each scene, and it's a kind of an interesting little detailic fact of like trying to portray as much as possible, despite the actual prologue of this magical comedy being like, "Hey, don't look at me, only hear me." So yeah. Anyways, what I'm gonna do is, as we listen along, I'm gonna follow along in the pages, and I actually put into text who is speaking every line. And as you can kind of see the pattern here, when Frula is speaking, it's the alto, tenor, bass, and then when Isabella is speaking, it's actually gonna be the alto, quinto, canto. So it kind of goes to show that there's never one person speaking. Even for this like little interjection here, you have this alto part that is just continuing essentially to just say both lines, which I think is really interesting. And then even so, you have a change in texture every now and then where you actually, have the alto delaying a little bit. And then you have, things still in the magical style of interjections, little delays. And then at the very end even, and hopefully we'll get a chance to listen to the whole thing, when Isabella says her final thing about how she's so happy that Lucio's alive, is that all 5 parts are actually singing. And it's an interesting and really powerful way to end the piece in this magical style. So, anyways, let's take a listen to it now.
Impedisce che non abbia effetto il colpo di Isabella, e le dà nova che Lucio, amante suo, vivo si trova.
Isabella, perché tu uscì? Lo farai, devi congiurarmi.
We now start at the beginning of Act 3, where we find another one of Pantalone's servants, Franca Trippa, along with Pantalone and Dr. Graziano. They're all 3 together planning for the celebrations and signing all the documents necessary for Dr. Graziano to finally be wedded to Isabella, not knowing that anything of which occurred between Isabella and Lucio and Captain Cardon before, and they're all kind of celebrating, getting together, the feast, and all of those things. The next scene kind of includes a ballad from Dr. Graziano to Isabella, pretty much saying how much he loves her. And it's actually it's a certain magical piece that's actually a parody of a certain magical piece by Capriano de Rora from the time that this was composed. So Dr. Graziano finishes his ballad, and then all the documents are signed for the wedding to happen. And then what happens is, Isabella and Lucio end up fighting each other. And they have their own kind of singing moment, and you could definitely imagine this as some sort of Twilight, like let's make eye contact for a real long time and have some really slow movements of love and staring at each other, and wow, this is fantastic, and wow, amazing. And after this, Isabella kind of confronts Dr. Graziano at saying that she is in love with Lucio, and then everyone kind of gives her their blessing because this is a comedy, and if there was another tragedy, then it wouldn't be a comedy anymore. So pretty much what happens is that wedding celebrations are instead used for Isabella and Lucio to go ahead and get married, and all of the major characters end up coming back, to the wedding and actually giving their gifts to Isabella and Lucio and giving them their best blessing. Even Captain Cardon, everyone is here. It's a whole fantastic moment. Everyone gives gifts. They're all kind of, saying each other it's having a good time, and that's kind of where I'm going to end it. I'd like to kind of delve into the last number of people coming back to talk about the music a little more and more about what the drama, how the direction of drama that Vecchi actually went, as opposed to giving a solo singer the voice of a character, giving it to a group of singers to show a certain timbre, and how I think that that's an interesting representation. And of course, we find that musical theater and modern dramas did not go in that direction, but it was an interesting take on musicals at the time, in the late Renaissance.
Ognun s'allegra e gode, e si pon fine ai bramati menei con vari doni, e dentro fansi feste, nozze e suoni.
It's kind of amazing what Vecchi's Lanfo Panarso represented for the time. I know I kind of joked earlier, but it really was progressive for its time, especially late Renaissance. It kind of set opened the gateway to what opera could be with Monteverdi, Mozart, Colli, and Pacelli. And it's kind of amazing how that happened. And you took Vecchi went ahead and took this format, and he made it very dramatic. He made a plot, although it may be loose and have plenty of holes in it. He had this plot, and he had all these quirky characters have different types of songs in it. Anything from I'm about to end my own life to haha, like I'm hitting on someone. That's some of the most comedic things ever, with these, like, you know, overacting like people with masks and mimes, and a little too intimate at times, but you know, it really stood for something. It stood for acting and being able to compose this thing where you told a story through the audio and through the audio alone, and that's what was intended. And you don't really have any of that even nowadays, except for obviously you have operas just without the singers, but operas are intended to be seen. So you really only get that through like podcasts and certain audiobooks nowadays, and usually that's not even with singing or through any sort of composed music. So it's very interesting how he went in an entirely different direction than everyone in front of him, and yet it kind of shows something. It shows of what could have happened. It could have shown how characters, it could have been normal to talk through different timbres of different vocal ranges and different. You could hear in the audio when different people speak it. They have nasally voices sometimes when they sing, and they really try their best to represent each character as they sing. And I think that's fantastic. The entire ensemble changes into that character, and I think that's something really cool. Having multiple people combine together, not only to make an ensemble, but to be one person and be able to switch in between which character you're playing with, and you know, a beat. And I don't know, it's something really cool, and it sets a precedent to what that kind of music could have been. It didn't catch on, but it's pretty neat to think about, isn't it? I also hope that I'll be able to do more research into this in the future and fix the stupid Wikipedia page that I used, but really the plot summary was terrible and it's not well formatted in any way, shape, or form. So I'm really going to go fix that Wikipedia page right after I make this video. And that, you know, enough research will be put into it, and maybe some sort of free English translation can be put online, as that's something I really wish I had in order to explain and learn the plot better myself. And some of those more nuanced, you know, types of lines that I totally missed just due to a lack of translation. But still, the music's there, and what it represents is there, and that's something beautiful. And I hope you learned something from it.